नाम। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचार निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतार। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Text 30 today.
Text 30.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
तत्र तत्र पुर ग्रामाकर खेत वाट खरवट शिविर ब्रज घोषण।
तत्र
तत्र पुरा ग्रामकार
वाट
पर्वत शिबिर व्रज घोष
सार्थगिरी वनाश्रमादिश्व अनुपथम अवनी चरा पसदे।
चरागिरी वनाश्रम आदिश्व अनुपथम अवंचिता
परिभूयमानो मक्षिकाभिर इव वन गजस्तर्जन ताड़ना वने हन।
परिभूयमानो मक्षिकाभिर इव वन गजस्तर्जन
वन ग्राव शक्रद रजः प्रक्षेप पूति वात दुरुक्तस्तत्।
सत्यवाना ग्रवः तत्रः राजः पक्षो इति पतः
अविगणयन् एवासत् संस्थान एतस्मिन् देहोपलक्षणे सद अपदेश।
अभिज्ञाने अविस्तते
एतस्मिन् देहोपलक्षणे सद अपदेश।
उभयानुभव स्वरूपेण स्व महिमावस्थानेन समारोपिताहम्।
उभयाभाने स्वरूपिणे शिवा महिमा पक्षे न स्वरूपत्रहरम्।
ममाभिमानत्वाद् अविखण्डित मनाः पृथ्वीम् एकचरः परिबभ्राम।
ममाविहम् अनात्मत्वात् अविखण्डिते मनः पृथ्वीम् एकचरः प्रतिभ्रम।
Yes, actually.
मेरे तो
Yes, please.
read.
Yes, please. Yes, bro.
Hare Krishna. The Sabdi began to tour through cities, villages, mines, countryside, valleys, gardens, military camps, cow pens, the homes of coward men, transitant hotels, hills, forests, and hermitages. Wherever he traveled, all bad elements surrounded him. Just as flies surrounded the body of the elephant coming from a forest, he was always being threatened, beaten, urinated upon, and spat upon. Sometimes people threw stones, stool, and dust at him, and sometimes people passed foul air before him. Thus, people called him many bad names and gave him a great deal of trouble. But he did not care about this, for he understood that the body is simply meant for such an end. He was situated on the spiritual platform, and being in his spiritual glory, he did not care for all these material insults. In other words, he completely understood that matter and spirit are separate, and he had no bodily conception. Thus, without being angry at anyone, he walked through the whole world alone. Purport by Sri Prabhupada. Narottam Das Thakur says, Dehe smriti nahi kyare samsar. Bandhide tanaha kare. When a person fully realizes that the material body and world are temporary, he is not concerned about pain and pleasures of the body. As Sri Krishna advertised in Bhagavad Gita 2.14, Mat spurse tu kaunte स्थितो सुख दुख देहे देम्यो पुण्यो अंत्यः तमसः तक्स्वः भरतः. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance and disappearance, and their disappearance is due in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from the sense perception. O second of Bhrata, Bharat, and one must learn and tolerate them without being disturbed. As far as Rishabdev is concerned, it has already been explained. Idam Sariram Mam Durvivyam. He did not at all possess his material body, and therefore he was tolerant of all the trouble offered him by the bad elements in society. Consequently, he could tolerate people throwing stool and dust upon him and beating him. His body was transitional and consequently did not at all suffer pain. He was always situated in his spiritual bliss. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 18.6, Ishvara Sarvbhutana Ardeshu Arjuna Itisthite Brahmam Yane Sarvbhutani Yantra Ajani Maya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. O Arjun, and is directing the wandering of all living entities, was seated as on a machine made of material energy. Since the Lord is situated in everyone's heart, He is the heart of hog and dog also. If hogs and dogs in their material bodies, even in filthy places, one should not think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma feature also lives in the filthy places. Although Lord Rishabdev was maltreated by the bad elements of the world, he was not at all affected. Therefore, it is stated that Sab Mahima Ev Avasthane, he was situated in his own glory. He was never saddened due to being insulted in the many ways described above. Hare Krishna Bhajan Pradhan.
Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. Deha smriti nahi yaar sansara bandhan kaha tha. When see the perfection of spiritual knowledge is to realize I am not this body. Gyan, that is Gyan. And then beyond that, Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, Nashvachati Nakakshati, Samha Sarveshu Bhuteshu Vadbhakti Param. If we see the verses of the Bhagavad Gita, actually Srimad Bhagavatam is a detailed explanation of Bhagavad Gita. Whatever we read in the Bhagavad Gita, we see in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is just, we see it in motion in Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Jnana is explained by Krishna, the knowledge that one is not this body, that the soul is distinct from the body. So actually in this material world, really speaking, what is good or what is bad? Actually, one like Srila Prabhupada also was putting in one of his lectures, said one man's food is another man's poison. So it's very easy to see. Like for example, if you go to Japan, they eat live fish. Live fish, just catch it. They have a small pool made in the table where the fish are floating, they just take it out and eat it. If you go to Hong Kong, you will find that people are eating roasted centipedes. Centipede, you won't even want to touch it. These people eat it. Or if you go to Australia, the Australian Aboriginals, they eat live maggots, a little caterpillar-like, worm-like insects which are crawling. So the Aboriginals take that as a delicacy. In a developed country like France, people love to eat snails. You wouldn't even want to touch them with your fingers. Or in the United States, people love to eat fried earthworms. So you see, that is also another form of consciousness. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples went to Burma, in Burma, they were trying to serve hot puris fried in ghee. But the villagers, they found it disgusting. They couldn't tolerate the smell of ghee. They couldn't tolerate the smell of puris frying in ghee. But what was the delicacy of the village? The delicacy was that they would catch all the dead animals in the forest and the streets, and they would put them in a bowl. So they would put all of them in a bowl, like in a big vessel. And at the end of the year, they would take out the liquid from that vessel and drink it. Now you can imagine animal bodies rotting for one whole year, and that was the food for these people. Okay, so you see what, and if an Indian person would drink that, he would die. But those Aboriginals, they were happy with that kind of. So in reality, what is good or what is bad? It is just a combination of the three gunas and the five gross elements. So which makes one thing disgusting and another thing palatable. A hog enjoys eating humans too. I mean, that's the staple food for a hog. Whereas a human being would want to eat delicacies. So in reality, neither the stool nor the delicacy is reality. They're just combinations of the elements of Mahatattva. So therefore, because Lord Rishabdev was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he had nothing to do with material elements. For him, the good and the bad was the same. Therefore, he could become completely immune to this thought process. So actually, that's the objective of spiritual life also. If we are to judge our own progress in bhakti, we should see how far we are detached from good or bad. Matras prashastu konteya shitoshna sukha dukkha da. Agama paino nitya stam stitikshasva bhata. The non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. No one feels sorry that winter has come or the summer has come. In India, summer is like a sad season, and in the West, the winter is the sad season. In India, people really welcome winters, but here in the West, people really hate winters. So, but in any case, everyone has to just tolerate. So in reality, a devotee understands that he's not this body at all. So therefore, he has neither attraction nor aversion to it. So Lord Rishabdev, he showed by his own example how to become indifferent to material elements. In the 18th chapter of Gita, also Krishna is telling Arjuna that you become indifferent. He's telling Arjuna to become indifferent to material happiness and distress. And that is the path of perfection. So here Rishabdev has shown it with his own example. So Lord Rishabdev is an extreme example because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the perfect personality. He is the Supreme Personality. Therefore, he displayed this renunciation to the extreme. So, if we are to attain that nature, this Brahma Bhuta nature, so this is one of the external appearances of Brahma Bhuta stage. Brahma Bhuta doesn't mean that one has plastic smile on his face and is speaking sweet things, wearing expensive clothes. No, Brahma Bhuta means that one is completely indifferent to this material world. Just as we were discussing yesterday about the example of Vansidas Babaji or Gaur Kishore Das Babaji himself. So Gaur Kishore or Jagannath Das Babaji, they were completely detached. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji would not entertain anyone really. They would just like stay aloof from all the people. Same as the Jagannath Das Babaji, he couldn't even see. He had to literally open his eyes with his hands. And yet when he went to Yoga Peeth, he started jumping with joy. He was 120 years old at that time. So that is the position. You see, when the soul has completely realized his original position, then he becomes full of joy. Then he becomes completely indifferent to externalities. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments? Text 31.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yes, Mataji, you can ask first.
No, go ahead, Prabhuji. कोई नहीं जी.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
As you were saying about this sloka, a very popular sloka we hear again and again.
Hmm.
So can you, for more understanding, can you give a day-to-day example and how we can apply this sloka? If you can tell, then we can really comprehend more nicely.
Which slok, Prabhu?
Matra Sparshaastu Kaunteya.
Matra Sparshaastu Kaunteya.
How in day-to-day life, any particular example you can, a daily life situation, practical situation, which every one of us may encounter at some part of our life, and then how to apply this sloka.
Most gladly, Prabhu, because this shlok actually appears thrice in Bhagavad Gita. In the 2nd chapter, then in the 5th chapter, and then in the 18th chapter. Krishna repeats the same message. So you can see that this is such an important verse. Now, see, before we go into some examples, I would want you to look very carefully at the wordings of this shloka. Really try to understand what's written here. Matra Sparshaastu Kaunteya. Sparsha, coming in contact. So because the living entity has come in contact with the material world, he is suffering. So, and then Krishna says, Tam Stitikshasva Bharata. Krishna is not telling Arjun that he will not be miserable. In fact, if we see the example of Pandavas, practically all the time they were miserable. When they were little boys, their father died. Then they were, first of all, when they were little boys, their father got the curse. And therefore, when they were, first of all, before they were born, the father got cursed. And he had to live in the forest. They were conceived in the forest. And there also, he died when they were small boys. And then they lived, and then their kingdom was taken away from them. Dhritarashtra was ruling. Also at that time, their so-called uncle and their cousins were inimical to them. So many attempts were made on their life. They were constantly insulted. And then they were unfairly cheated. Their wife was insulted. Their mother was threatened with death. And then finally, when the chance came to rule, they had to kill everyone they loved. And then, when they ruled also, the Lord, for whom they did everything, also left this world. So you can see how, in the sense, we can say how miserable their life was. So Krishna, and they were actually miserable. At the end of the war, Yudhishthira Maharaj was crying. He was inconsolable, according to the wordings of Mahabharata. He was inconsolable. He could not bear to see the sufferings. When they came back to Hastinapur, he saw like multitudes of widows and orphans. And he was miserable that he became the cause of such destruction. Even though Krishna had ordered it, but still Yudhishthira Maharaj took it upon himself. So you can see there was no happiness really in that sense, if we see. So what is Krishna's advice? Tamsa titikshasva bharata. Learn to tolerate. A devotee is not going to become mystically happy. Don't go by those videos. Hare Krishna, I chant and I am happy. It's all nonsense. Complete nonsense. Because as soon as the first personal tragedy comes, the hero or heroine will disappear from the screen also. And from real life also. Krishna is not advising that you will become happy. Krishna is saying that you will become detached. So he's advising, learn to detach yourself from happiness. In fact, this is the first instruction Krishna is giving. When he starts in the 11th verse, he's only explaining the distinction between the soul and the body. But here, so first he says, Dhiras tatra na muhyati. He's saying that those who are wise are not disturbed. But then this is the instruction he gives. Tam stitikshasva bharata. Learn to tolerate. Misery will come. You tolerate that. Happiness will also come. You tolerate that also. At no point is Krishna advising Arjun that you will become completely indifferent and happy. No, that just won't happen. Because we are in the material world. Bhishma Dev is saying the same thing to Yudhishthira Maharaj. That you suffered because you are in the material world. This is the place. Dukhalayam ashashtam. There will be misery only here. In fact, you should be surprised if there is no misery. Misery is the the default of this material world. One has to tolerate. People tolerate, isn't it? We hear so many stories. Such and such boy was an orphan. Then he came to Bombay. He lived on the streets like a beggar. And then he became a millionaire. Or we read the story of even Dhirubhai Ambani. He was just a petrol pump attendant, and his children were so poor that Mukesh and Anil Ambani had just one pair of shoes. And they would carry it in their hands to go to school. And they would only wear it for inspection time. So, and then they struggled and they became rich. So, these stories, so one learns to tolerate even for material prosperity. All the stories that we hear of NDAI, societies, those are stories of misery. 8 hours I was studying, I was getting up at 4 in the morning and studying till 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I would sleep only a little bit. What is that? That's misery. It's more or less a self-inflicted misery, but it's a misery nonetheless. Who enjoys that? But if you want some success, you have to learn to tolerate. So is the case in Bhakti also. Krishna is advising. Krishna himself, his first instruction is learn to tolerate happiness and distress, both. So in this world, we usually hear people talking about tolerating miseries. But Krishna is advising us to tolerate happiness as well. Okay, so now what is the example here? So all the examples, material world is full of these examples only. In Bhakti especially. So we have to tolerate. Like for example, Arjuna, he tolerated the death of his own grandfather. Actually, the biggest misery to Arjuna was the killing of Dronacharya and Bhishmadev. He loved those personalities, but he had to inflict death upon them. So that made him extremely miserable, but he had to do it as a matter of duty. So that is Bhakti. You have to learn to tolerate to execute your devotional service. So we may have so many personal tragedies. So I know one brahmachari, he lost his mother, and then the very next morning he had his Bhagavatam class, so he did not cancel that and he came to speak. So we have to do our duty. Srila Prabhupada, he suffered so much. He suffered a heart attack. He was paralyzed in New York. He didn't even know whether he'd be able to get out of that city or not. But still, he persisted. He did not come back to settle down in Vrindavan. His heart attack came in 1968. But Prabhupada did not think that, oh, now I'll die, so let me not to Vrindavan. No. He said, if the death has to come, let it come here. At least I would have died doing my duty. Prabhupada thought like this. And he tolerated and he stayed. And we know the history of that. Next 9 years, Srila Prabhupada created miracles. So you see, we have to learn to tolerate. And happiness will also come. You'll have a wife, you'll get a child, you'll get a job, you'll get some wealth. All that will come. But that doesn't mean that you should leave your duty and go. In fact, the biggest problem that devotees face is that they are not able to tolerate happiness. What to do, Prabhu? My child is so disturbing, I like to play with him. Well, today you are not tolerating happiness, tomorrow you have to be able to tolerate misery as well. Material world is not designed for our happiness. So we have to become very sober-minded. Hare Krishna. Does that answer your question, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, thank you. Especially when it comes to the part of tolerating happiness, how do we do it? Like, for example, we may get some material success, or we may be able to do certain spiritual devotional service, some devotional services very efficiently. So they all seem to be success in different perspectives. Having a nice family, hassle-free life. So we can say these are something like happiness for most of the people. So how to understand to tolerate happiness in this case?
Tolerating happiness means that we must learn to understand proper philosophy. What is happiness in this material world? What could be a cause of happiness? A devotee should understand that there is no happiness in this material world. So why should a devotee think that he is happy? Okay, there may be some success in job, some success in family, but that's okay. One should not give up one's devotional service for that. That is the biggest tragedy. If one thinks, okay, now I don't need to serve Krishna. Actually, Srila Prabhupada also is very extreme. People would come to Krishna consciousness to attain freedom from material miseries. These great sages, big sages like Jaimini, Kanad, Markandeya, these great personalities, they are free from the miseries of birth, soul, and disease. They are Brahma's children. They are practically transcendent. But they don't have lump of forehead because they are free from misery, they don't feel the need. We also are executing bhakti because we feel that we are miserable right now, or we anticipate some misery. As soon as the misery is finished, so we don't know if we are given liberation, we may perhaps not remain devotees also. We will become so happy that we may not want to serve Krishna. So we have to learn to tolerate. So we should, that's why I said, Prabhu, we should introspect in life. We should always think, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I am unhappy? Am I doing this because I am a Hindu? Or am I doing this because this is what has to be done? This is the purpose of my life. If you are able to render bhakti when you no longer enjoy it, when there is no pleasure in it, when it's too miserable, when it is too austere, then you can think that, okay, now you are advancing. An army soldier may in the beginning he may enjoy the respect that he gets when he wears the uniform. But most of the life of a soldier is quite hard. It's not fun, that's fun sense. They are not singing songs and dancing in the mountains. They are doing very mundane tasks. And there is no war every day. Soldiers are not running with guns up and down the mountains and shooting enemies. Most of the time, most of the year, they're just cleaning the guns. So you see, so there's no fun there, but that's a duty. It has to be performed. If you go to Siachen Glacier, minus 60 degrees, or you're in Ladakh, high altitude desert, just muddy plains everywhere, just tall rocky mountains, dirty muddy rivers, like not dirty, I mean like thoroughly muddy rivers flowing there. All these kind of things, when you see, there is no enjoyment. But it's a duty that has to be done. So just like that, Bhakti also is not going to be chant and be happy all the time. In fact, it won't be chant and be happy it'll be chant and be happy hardly any time. So we should not artificially try to become ecstatic. There is no ecstasy in material life. There is no ecstasy, just dancing wildly, jumping up and down, beating drums is not going to make us happy. So, and we should not seek unnecessary association because we are. Bhakti means very serious. I mean, Madhavendra Puri had no association. He was mostly alone in his life. And in the end, when he was leaving this body, this rascal Ramachandra Puri came to, annoy him still further. So tolerance. So tolerating happiness means understanding that there is no happiness here.
So the so-called situational happiness of the happiness of the body and the mind, we just accept as a transit moment. We can just say, we can have a expression of gratefulness towards Krishna, and at the same time keep praying that when the difficult times come also, then in both the times we are always fixed up in our devotional service. So that should be our mindset, even in the best times, seemingly best times, and even in the materialistically very difficult times.
Yes, absolutely, bro. Absolutely.
It's very natural that when we are in the most difficult times, the prayers come out. Because if even we have a little tinge of liking towards devotion, so immediately we always make a prayer to the Lord. Keep me in your shelter. But many times, in my case, I find that when this times of glory is there, so yeah, it will be quite an external appreciation of thank you, O Lord, but not much of grateful prayers come out. So then I understand that still long way to go.
Yeah. See, Prabhu, we are at a very, very preliminary stage of bhakti. We are at a very preliminary stage of bhakti. It will take us a long time. We should be patient. We had utsah. Now we don't have so much utsah, but we should have dhairya. Then Nishchay will come. First, let's practice dhairya, patience. Everything will come in due course of time. It may take many lifetimes also. It may not happen anytime soon.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Mataji had a question.
Yeah, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, you already answered the question. It was almost similar to what you asked. So you answered it. Just the comment, the happiness seems actually more scary than misery there. Because in happiness, there's no punch, punch or desire to serve Krishna, I guess.
See, think of it this way. What is happiness in this world? Now, like, suppose I come and gift you a Mercedes Maybach or Mercedes S-Class. How many days will that be happiness? 1 day, 2 days? Then it will become 1 day. But suppose I have gifted you a brand, like, black polished Mercedes S-Class. And tomorrow your neighbor comes and scratches it. Like a tiny but ugly gash on the side of your car. How will you feel? That's material happiness. It will hurt you.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. This material world, all the happiness is tainted with anxiety. You have a child. You're a mother. When you have a child, how many years are spent in anxiety? You remember
entire life, probably.
Yeah, when you are pregnant, they do this Down syndrome test, isn't it? Like to check whether the baby is going to be healthy or not. They do these ultrasound scans.
Yes.
So that's like 9 months of anxiety. Know whether the child is like in the beginning there is happiness. Okay, I'm going to have a child. But soon there is like this anxiety. Will the child be healthy? Then the child is born. Then immediately this battery of psychological tests. Is his mind okay? Why is he not talking after 2 years?
Yes.
Is his IQ okay? Then when everything turns out to be okay, it's already 2 to 3 years gone. And then after that, again they start like then another anxiety. So how is he doing in school? Then there will be all these hosts of diseases, which are terribly scary. So this host of diseases which have so many problems, like imagine when a child gets chicken pox, how frightening it looks. And all those teething troubles.
Painful.
Yeah, they are very painful. It is always scared whether the child is going to survive also. And then there is anxiety. Will he be able to make a career or anything or not? And then just anxiety all the time. That happiness is drowned in anxiety. Or as Srila Prabhupada would say, it's like sweet rice mixed with sand. It is sweet rice, it is sweet, but there is so much sand, you can't really enjoy it. So you see, that's material happiness.
True. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. That was enlightening.
Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada says, for a devotee should be generally pessimistic about material life. It's good to be pessimistic. Because when you are like drowning in despair in material life, then one day you will think about some ways of getting out of it. That will be the day your devotional life begins. Okay, so we continue text 31. Ati sukumara kara charanam kali vipula bhava shikala.
Ati Sukumar Subha
Vadanadya avayava vinasaya prakriti sundara swabhava hasa sundaro.
Prakriti Sundara Swabhava Sumukha
Nava nalina dalayamana shishira tararu ayat nayana ruchira sadvisha.
Navana
Shishira Sadrish Subhag
Subhanga Kapola Karna Kantha Naso Vigudha Smita Vadana.
Subhaga Kapol Karna Kantana so Vibhu Smita Vadana Moho.
महोत्सवेन उग्रवनितानां मनसि कुसुम शरासनम्
Mahotsavena
Mahotsvena Puravatana Manasi Kusum
पदधाना पराग अवलंबमान कुटिल जटिल कपिश केश भूमि
Upadhana
Padadhana Paraga Valamba Mana
Kutil
Kutal Jatal Kapisha Kesha Bhuri
भारो वधूत मलिन निज शरीरेण गृहगृहीत विवादशय
Bharo Avadhuta Malini Nij Shariren Grihita Evadrishya.
Yes. Would someone like to read?
May I read, Prabhuji?
Yes.
Thank you, Ji. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ji ki jai. Translation. Lord Rishabdev's hands, feet, chest were very long. His shoulders, face, and limbs were all very delicate and symmetrically proportioned. His mouth was beautifully decorated with his natural smile, and he appeared all the more lovely with his reddish eyes spread wide like petals of a newly grown lotus flower with dew in early morning. The irises of his eyes were so pleasing that they removed all the trouble of everyone who saw him. His forehead, ears, neck, nose, and all his other features were very beautiful. His gentle smile always made his face beautiful, so much so that he even attracted the hearts of married women. It was so tough. It was as though they had been pierced by arrows of Cupid. Although his head was an abundance of curly, matted brown hair, his hair was disheveled because his body was dirty and not taken care of. He appeared as if he were haunted by a ghost. Purport. Although Lord Rishabdev's body was very much neglected, his transcendental features were so attractive that even married women were attracted to him. His beauty and dirtiness combined to make his beautiful body appear as though it was haunted by a ghost. Thank you, Ji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. So this is very similar to the pastimes of Krishna also. See, Krishna, so even though you see he's transcendental, we have discussed this previously also. So he's an incarnation of the Lord, so therefore he's completely transcendental. So he's not this body. I mean, his body is spiritual. He's not, he doesn't have a material body. So even though his body was so, you can say, neglected, it was so dirty, still it had a transcendental beauty. Krishna, we say Kandarpa Koti Kamani Vishesha Shubham. So he's so beautiful. So Lord is, so Rishabdev Maharaj being an incarnation of Krishna was extremely beautiful. So now you see, now there's a very specific mention here. He attracted the hearts of married women. It was also, although as though they had been pierced by the arrows of Cupid. Now this is similar to the pastimes of Lord Krishna. The gopis who were attracted to Krishna, they were also married. So it is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam or 10th canto, or actually Krishna book, that just after the pastime of, actually just during the pastime of stealing of boys by Brahmaji, and that pastime took over 1 year. And in that year itself, gopis were married to all the boys of Gokul. So at that time, we can understand that gopis, when Ras Leela was performed, so Ras Leela was performed after the stealing of the cows, of the cowherd boys and the calves. So certainly this Ras Leela took place when gopis were married to somebody else. And in the spiritual world, this Leela is always an ongoing Leela, it doesn't end. Likewise, we see the example of the wives of Brahmanas. At that time also, they were attracted to Krishna because Krishna is all attractive. They were certainly married to Brahmanas. So this is very interesting. Cowherd girls, we can still say that they were, cowherd girls. They were married to Vaishyas, like, Shudra like Vaishyas. But this Brahmana, they were coming from very cultured family. Yet they were attracted by Krishna and Balaram. Similarly, we see the case of the queens of Dwarka. Actually, the queens of Dwarka were not chaste ladies in that sense, in a Vedic sense. They were all kidnapped by Bhaumasura. So when Krishna killed Bhaumasura, at that time he just wanted to send all the princesses back to their fathers. But they requested Lord, said, "My dear Lord, now nobody will accept us." And they also expressed that they were very much attracted to him. So Krishna accepted them. So that is the position. So here we see also Rishabdev was also very attractive. But what is the philosophical understanding behind this is Krishna is Madana Mohan. In this material world, the so-called marriage or love is nothing but Madan. It's cupid, it's lust. Pumshamastriya mithuni bhavamekam. Just attraction because of the bodily form of male or female. So these women were married, they were married women. So this is the principle of Cupid, but Krishna attracts the Cupid, Madana Mohan. Therefore, in front of Krishna, even the material lust fades. And anyone will become completely attracted to Krishna. But here we have to understand one thing. Here Srila Prabhupada is speaking from a very old Vedic perspective. In today's age, it's very common. I mean, practically, so many women have extramarital affairs nowadays. When I was working in the media, it was like, it was a very shocking experience, really speaking. So, I mean, it's not applicable in the present state anymore. Present state is so degraded. People living like animals anyway. So, here we can see that even chaste ladies were attracted to Lord Rishabdev. So, according to Vedic tradition, actually, Srila Prabhupada explains this also, that when a girl is married at a very young age, she will not be attracted to other men. So, that's the point here. So, in that case, that's why the statement is specifically mentioned in Bhagavad. That so many chaste ladies also of the Vedic Varnashram, even they were attracted by him because he's the Lord, Madana Mohan. So if you understand the cultural context also, Bhagavatam becomes more relishing. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Dandavat
Pranam.
between this text 31 and text 30. In fact, when I was going through text 30, I was surprised in those days, when the culture was so high, could anybody misbehave with the person, a common person also? They say they're throwing food on him, rebuking him, and testing and all that. But I thought it was Leela, I kept quiet. But now the very next text, it shows how Rishabdev was. Because Almighty God, naturally, was very attractive in all those things. So how these two things, immediately in 30th and 31st text, the two descriptions are given about the behavior of the people which is up there. And lately, married ladies, he said that married and they also become attractive. They were not chaste. Then they were not chaste. Chastity is in the mind. So even with God, they may love God like a father or son, or even otherwise. But loving as a lover, no more chastity is gone.
Now that's a very interesting point you raised here. So point number one is, why were people behaving in such a deplorable manner with him, throwing stones and other things? So even in the Vedic times, there were Chandalas and Shudras. Shudras are generally considered uncultured. Today's society is a Shudra society. Chandalas, outcasts, there are many of those. I mean, there is not one Chandala, there are many varieties of Chandalas. So if you see practically like outside of India, most of the Western and Eastern world is practically Chandalas. You know, no hygiene, nothing like they just take like they'll just rub some alcohol and then this purity. So this is Chandala culture. They're eating you can say unofferable foods. Like for example, here in Germany, Germans eat intestines, pig intestines, cow intestine. That is also bratwurst. That's intestine. So it's like the lowest kind of. They are Chandalas. They only appear to be sophisticated because of technical skills, but they are Chandalas. So there were many such people. So they were behaving like that. Now coming back to the point of married women getting attracted in a romantic fashion. Now that's the important point here is the Jivatma is always an associate of the Lord. So, because they are in the bodies of lady, that is the kind of attraction they experience for him. Now, because he appeared as a young man, I mean, if a lady is like 25, 30 years old and the man is like 35, 40 years old, she can't think of him as a son or a father. That's one thing. Other thing is attraction towards the Lord could be in any form. Like the parakiya bhav of bhakti is precisely this bhav. Like Srila Prabhupada mentions in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that many of the ladies who were attracted, some of the gopis attracted to Krishna were not transcendental, were not experiencing transcendental attraction, they were lustily attracted. But as soon as they came in contact with Krishna, they were purified. Kubja is a prime example of that. Kubja also, like Kubja had no pure intentions for Krishna. But because she was attracted to Krishna, she became purified. So we can understand. So because these ladies are experiencing attraction in a bodily, in a material form. So the so-called chastity of a lady, attraction towards her own husband, is not something desirable either. Living entity is only meant to be attracted to Krishna. That is what Lord Rishabhdev is teaching here. That he's completely indifferent. He doesn't feel any happiness or unhappiness. He's completely indifferent to the material world. So living entity should not be attracted even to one's own wife or husband. Attraction, like Prabhupada would say, love is only for Krishna. Everything else is lust. So even the so-called chaste love of husband and wife, that is also lust. Because it's material. Because it's bodily. So that also has to be given up. That's why sannyas is there. Even the so-called pure love of mother and son, even that is unchaste from a spiritual perspective, because that is also material.
That is very high philosophy. And perhaps let's also accept that we are in material world. And so as long as we live in the material world, what are the rules made by the society are to follow. Right? Thinking of that everything is spiritual and our body is also spiritual, but it becomes contemplative. So this is a very high thing. Now, after reading Bhagavatam and listening to you and the other people, that we started realizing it a little bit of it. Otherwise, 90.9% people are absolutely ignorant about it.
Yes.
And we have to live with that set of the people. So everything, even when we read these books on our own without applying much mind of it is so, I must say, it is so purifying. It's very purifying. Thanks to Prabhupada. But then when we go to these nitty-gritties, what you are explaining about the very high philosophy, I don't know how this can be made applicable towards time. According to we all live in the material world in the hellish condition for many, many lives to come. There's no going out of it.
Narad Muni himself is going to say, you're going to see the next canto, where Narad Muni says that one who is seen to enter the material world is never seen coming back. It doesn't matter if it's Vedic times or even Brahma Loka. Lust is always there.
It looks like that is more material, more real than other things. Because otherwise, what we're following is the very high spiritual standards are very, very temporary and very, very fake thing. Actual thing is
fake. No, don't be cynical here. The living entity in the material world itself is contaminated. Vedic culture is a restriction. It doesn't mean that simply by following Vedic culture means everyone is pure. No, Vedic culture is meant to restrict. For example, here we are talking about the attractive power of the Lord. So they are already Episu Papa Yonaya, they are Papa Yoni. They have taken the birth in a female body, they are Papa Yoni already. It's a sinful birth. That doesn't mean they are pure or anything. They are living in Vedic culture. So Vedic culture of getting girls married at a very early age and living indoors is to prevent them from getting attracted here and there.
quite good.
They are contaminated. They are always contaminated. They are not pure.
The whole thing is so complicated. One has to have very high standards to understand these things. But yet, it's a very satisfying.
That's why Srila Prabhupada said that a grahastha should spend only 4 hours in his business and the remaining time should spend in understanding transcendental literatures. Life is too short. We have very short lifespan. We spend 50, 60 years just working, and then we try to enter spiritual life. It is impossible.
Right.
Very heavy.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Anandam Prabhu, you have a question also.
As you were telling, we are realizing to be that so much of endeavor to sustain the material world. So when we read the Bhagavatam purpose and meditate on it, there are so many perspectives. And sometimes, like what Prabhuji was saying, it feels overwhelming, like so much. Is the path not so easy as it was told in the earlier days? So that sometimes the thoughts definitely come. It was told that it is a very simple path and any sincere practitioner can walk this path. But try to become more sincere, we understand that the path is not so easy. There is so much of purification required. As this aspect which you mentioned, that the moment we are there in this material world, so much of contamination. We are contaminated, therefore we are in this material world, and in this material world we are in this particular time, the most polluted time, that is Kali Yuga. And in this Kali Yuga, we remain in the illusion that, oh, we are so glorious, we are so purified people. Practicing little bit, sometimes we feel like, okay, we are doing great things. That was one thing when you were speaking and devotees were discussing came to mind. Another aspect was like here the contrast, the contrast of beauty versus dirt, or beauty versus something materialistically. We have this sight that if a person is not decorating his body or is not in an orderly manner, then he is shaggy. So there is no attraction or no beauty in it. But Bhagavatam is picking up that point that Krishna or the Lord, even in the materialistically contrasting situation where no person would look beautiful, but Krishna will look beautiful, Lord will look beautiful in that situation. So the thing came in my mind like dwarf. A dwarf is never beautiful. Dwarfs are not beautiful. We look at dwarfs in our material world also. They are not so beautiful because they are basically more deformed cases. The child is beautiful, but the dwarf is not beautiful. But then Krishna comes as Vaman Dev, and then he's described so beautiful. Comes as Varaha. Varaha is a pig, and pigs are not beautiful, not so beautiful. They may be showed in animations and anime that they are looking beautiful, but they are not so beautiful. They look clumsy also. But then when the Krishna element is there, that is a pure spiritual element is there, we see that things are beautified automatically. So that is the contrast we can understand, like even in seemingly materialistically ugly situation or not so beautiful or glamorous situation, still Krishna and his incarnations are very attractive. Feature which I was thinking on it, so I just happened to share with you.
Yes. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we stop here today. We'll continue tomorrow from text 32.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Right.
Sure.
Thank you,
Prabhuji,
Prabhuji.
one other thing.
Yeah.
आपने today you mentioned कंदर्प कोटि कमनीय. इसका मतलब क्या होता है? What do you mean by कंदर्प कोटि कमनीय?
Kandarpa Koti Kamani. This is from the 5th chapter of what is that? Brahma Samhita. So this is the glorification of the beauty of the Lord. So if you see this, for example, so the whole verse is like this: Venu Panantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Varhavatam Asitam Buddha Sundarangam कंदर्प कोटि कमनीय विशेष शुभम गोविंदम आदि पुरुषम तमहम भजामि. So one whose figure charms millions of cupids, what do we call that? Kamaniya cupids. So Kandarpa, that's Cupid. So he charms. He can charm millions of cupids. Like, Cupid is charming everyone. So who can charm Cupid?
So the one Koti means million, Kandarp means Cupid, and Kamaniya
Charming.
charming.
The word Kamna comes from this.
Oh, sorry. ठीक है जी, thank you Babuji. So if this will be available this is available in Brahma Samhita, you said, the prayer?
Yeah, Brahma Samhita.
ठीक है जी.
You can try reading it.
Yeah, no, I have heard this. Like sometimes people sing this, I think early enough in the beginning, in the morning maybe. I have heard that. That's why it clicked me. Kandarp Koti Kamaniya. बस मतलब नहीं पता था, सुना था. So I thought to
Charming
ask.
millions of cupids.
Our Sridhar Arti is a part of the Brahma Samhita.
कौन सी आरती जी? Sorry, which आरती?
7 o'clock आरती जो गाया
हाँ जी.
जाता है वो ब्रह्म संहिता का ही 3 वर्सेस के ऊपर.
जो श्रृंगार के बाद गाते हैं,
गोविंदम आदि पुरुषम जो गाते हैं ना,
हम बजामी. हाँ जी, हाँ जी.
that is जो जिसके ऊपर अभी हमारा चर्चा हो रहा है, कंदर्प कोटि कमनीय.
ठीक है जी. Thank you Babuji. Nice to know. Hare Krishna ji. Thank you.
हरे कृष्णा. दंडोत नाम प्रभु.
अच्छा प्रभु.
हाँ बोलिए ना.
देखिए, हर्ष के साथ अभी हमारा सेशन मॉर्निंग्स में होगा.
अच्छा,
तो वो आपको चलेगा?
हर्ष अभी का उल्वे में कहाँ पे?
अभी उल्वे में ही है.
अच्छा, मॉर्निंग में कितना टाइम में है?
अराउंड 9 बजे सवेरे.
9 बजे. कौन से दिन?
एवरी डे.
ठीक है प्रभु, जब जब पॉसिबल है मैं लॉगिन.
गीता का ही डिस्कशन चल रहा है, तो सेकंड चैप्टर में ही है अभी.
9 बजे बोला तो आपके लिए वो 6:30 होगा.
मेरे 6:30.
ओके.